Gurevych, and I would like to welcome you to the ELLIS workshop on natural language processing and speech recognition, which is co-organized by the ELLIS Unit Prague and the ELLIS Associate Unit in Lviv. This is already the second workshop organized by us. Last year, we had a workshop on 3D computer vision and robotics. But this year, the objective is to discuss the latest scientific advances in the areas of natural language processing and speech recognition. These areas have seen a major progress in recent years, as well as successes in many practical applications. In ELLIS, this is one of the key or core topics of interest. ELLIS has a specialized research program on natural language processing, and also it is one of the core topics of interest in many of the ELLIS units. ELLIS has also helped initiate the European projects such as Open Euro LLM, which you may have heard about, which just started recently, which is building a set of European large language models, or another recent project, which I think has not been announced yet, but it's has been accepted, is ELLIOT, which is, I think, starting soon and will build European large open multimodal foundation models. And so it's a very exciting topic we have here, and it's great to have the exciting lineup of speakers here. And I would like to give the word now to Rostislav Hrynin from Lviv, who will also say a few introductory remarks. Rostislav, please. Hello, Rostislav. Are you with us?
Hello.
It seems we may have some...
Yeah.
We can't...
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. It's great to have all the speakers, and I am very, very glad to welcome everyone to the second ELLIS workshop of natural language processing and speech recognition. As last year, we decided to make it a fully online event for several reasons, and one of the reasons is that we understand. First of all, we would like to have a wide audience of participants, and actually there are more than 170 participants registered from all over the world, literally from all continents, excluding Antarctica, of course. We here in Ukraine, we understand what obstacles, what challenges low and moderate resource languages face, and we hope that these aspects will be interesting for other European and not only European researchers. As an interesting fact, Grammarly, a well-known AI assisting company, that is writing assistant tool, was developed in Ukraine in 2009. Another reason for doing it online is that unfortunately Ukrainians have limited possibilities to visit scientific and research events in the world, and these option will also make possible many of talented Ukrainian students and researchers to join the event. As Joseph already mentioned, there is a Slido form, link to the Slido form to ask the questions, and we are probably well set to start.
Okay, thank you, Rostislav. So we've heard that we are doing it online as last year, and I think we will have this way also larger impact. So very exciting topic. We have an exciting lineup of speakers, and let me introduce the first speaker today, who is Iryna Gurevych. I will say a few words about her. It's really exciting to have her here today. She's a full professor at the Computer Science Department at the Technical University of Darmstadt. Her background is in information extraction, semantic text processing, machine learning, and innovative applications of NLP to social sciences and humanities. She has very impressive set of achievements. I'll just mention here a few. She's the winner of the Royal Society Milner Award and lecturer in 2025, member of Leopoldina at the German National Academy of Science. She's a recipient of an ERC Advanced Grant for a project related to NLP. She is a founding faculty and principal investigator of the Hessian Center for Artificial Intelligence. She's an ACL fellow and also an ELLIS fellow, and she's one of the co-directors of the ELLIS program on natural language processing. So it's really exciting to have her here today and see her perspective on how to spot and debunk misleading content. Iryna, thank you very much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Joseph. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the topic of misinformation and how AI and NLP techniques can contribute to reduce the spread of misinformation and also help people understand and evaluate information better. So misleading content is a threat to humans. I think in the current situation is pretty self-explanatory. In addition, there are other sources of danger. For example, people read social media, believe some facts and may take wrong medicine, leading to a health issue or even to death. Another popular type of misinformation is image misinformation. So here you see an example of an image which is claiming that this is a particular institution in India. However, the origin of this image is a completely different country. So it's Malaysia and not a medical institute in India as it is claimed. And there are plenty of such pieces of misinformation circulating in public media. Recently, machines have become very widespread, specifically large language models, and it turns out that the misinformation is also a threat to machines because similar to people, machines consume this false information. Here I give an example of a chart that has been manipulated. And if asked a question by the user, what was the trend of gun deaths after 2005, the machine is vulnerable to this manipulated chart and will give a false answer that the number of deaths has been decreasing, while due to an inverted axis, it has been actually increasing. So if we look at the conventional way how to check information with the help of AI techniques, there is an established task of fact-checking in NLP. And this task is formalized such that the system is given a claim. For example, Sydney is the capital of Australia. And we have some trusted knowledge base that can be a large collection of documents or a database, whatever sources of information are being considered. And then we apply evidence retrieval, typically using some text similarity techniques that will retrieve pieces of evidence similar to the claim. So here it will retrieve, for example, the fact that Canberra is the capital of Australia, and then we give the pair of inputs to a text pair classifier, and that will predict the veracity of the claim. And here the verdict would be that the claim is false because the classification prediction detects the contradiction relation. So all of this has been practiced in NLP for a very long time. A little problem is that if we look at the real life misinformation, and this is what is actually the problem we should be concerned about, at the time when this piece of misinformation is published in public media, there is no counter evidence, and this is natural because for false information, typically no counter evidence would exist. And that explains the gap between the mainstream NLP fact-checking approaches and what the community has been doing for a long time, and the real-life requirements of the task of debunking misinformation that we are concerned with. So, looking at debunking as it is done by human fact-checkers, we realize this is a very complex process that can actually deal with the lack of evidence for given claims. How do fact-checkers do this? Usually, fact-checkers try to understand who is the entity putting forward the claim. So here, for example, it can be a particular party. What do they do next? They try to find out more information about that entity. Here, specifically, they would retrieve the political agenda of that party, and they try to reason about the claim and the information they have about the party and figure out the intention behind the claim. They may consult a set of other sources. And also they read, of course, the evidence provided with this claim and evaluate the evidence. And they find out that the claim cannot be true, for example, because the evidence stems from 2005, where there was no COVID-19. Also, it is actually about a different virus and a different type of experiment. So as you see, the process is complex, and it is not necessarily based on retrieving evidence from existing sources, but more on applying particular reasoning techniques. And in the time that I have, I'm going to highlight some research works that have been carried out in our lab in this space that can operate under these conditions of non-existing prior evidence. So the first work is led by my final year PhD student Max Glockner in collaboration with Yufang Hu and Preslav Nakov. So as I said, for novel claims, automated fact-checking will not be applicable due to missing counter evidence. And also other techniques that exist, like automated fallacy detection, would fail in this instance because the claim is very short and there is not enough surface information in order to debunk the claim. And usually, if such a claim is put forward on social media, they also attach some credible scientific evidence, misleading people to believe the claim. Because if you look at the title of this a medical article published in a credible journal, it looks very similar to the claim. And what we propose is to analyze this article attached as the evidence and basically debunk the reasoning, which is false, that is, which contains fallacies when we reason from the evidence to the claim. Now, specifically, we propose to reconstruct the fallacious argument from the evidence to the claim, and we represent the scientific publication as an accurate premise. So an accurate premise is a piece of information that the article in reality contains. So this is the correct claim contained in the article. In this example, chloroquine reduced infection of coronavirus. And then there are some passages in the article that contain what we call fallacy context. So we reconstruct these pieces of information. Specifically, they provide more background context to the accurate premise. So here the study used cell cultures for the experiments, and the second context is the study was conducted on SARS-CoV-1. And then the task is basically to reconstruct the fallacious premise. So here the fallacious premise is that the results can be transferred to humans because the human body consists of cell structure. And this is what we know as the fallacy of composition. And the second fallacy related to context 2 is the false equivalence fallacy, because SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2 are both coronaviruses, and they do look similar, but they are actually different viruses, and therefore they cannot be treated in the same way. So the task of the system would be basically to debunk the claim by reconstructing the fallacious premises and detecting the fallacies in the reasoning between the evidence and the claim. Since this task definition is completely new, we construct a data set where we take fact-checking articles written by experts, and we basically re-engineer their reasoning process in order to extract the reasoning. So we manually identify all cases where a scientific publication is misrepresented by some claim on social media. So this is our particular scenario, and then we manually reconstruct the fallacious arguments. That is, we extract the accurate premise, the fallacy context, the fallacious premises, and the types of fallacies. And we mark the relevant passages in those medical articles. And finally, we consolidate the annotations that have been performed by biology students, that is semi-experts, and we reach quite a good level of inter-annotator agreement. To highlight a few experiments from this work, in the first experiment, we tried to detect the accurate premise, that is, what is the claim based upon in the article, and also the fallacy context related to that premise, so which content points to fallacies. And here we employ a range of text similarity techniques, as well as common lexical retrieval, but also scientific fact-checking techniques that can help us extract the claims and the premises, and we reach results which are not very high. So for example, precision at 1 is 0.6 for the best method, but that can be viable in helping a human fact-checker in order to filter information effectively in an interactive way. And for the fallacy context detection, the results, mean average precision, are similar. So they are kind of usable, but there is a large room for improvement because the task is obviously very difficult based on the expert domain. The next task we look at is predicting the fallacy class or the fallacious premise. So this task is a sort of simplified scenario where we predict the applied fallacy class when the fallacious premise is provided. And we experiment with different prompting strategies containing the definition of fallacy, the logical form, and the example. And we use open and closed large language models. And what we can see here is that both evaluated large language models can perform quite well at the level of 0.7 accuracy and F measure on this task. However, of course, the task is simplified. What we actually want is we want to verbalize the fallacious premise automatically. We want to infer it, and then we want to determine the class of fallacy. So in reality, there will be also several fallacious premises for one claim, as my example has shown. And on this task, the results drop very much significantly when the large language model both has to generate the fallacious premise and detect the class. So there is a drop from 0.7 basically to 0.3, which shows how difficult this task is. And for another evaluation, we look if the claim is debunked by at least one correct fallacy from multiple fallacious contexts, and this is the case for every second claim. So in summary, what I present is a novel formalism to debunk real-world misinformation. We have proposed some benchmarks that bridge the gap between automatic fact-checking and fallacy detection, and there are many more findings in the related publication. The second project I want to talk about briefly is based on images. Images and visual misinformation are particularly on the rise in recent time. And here we work together with the KU Leuven University, and the work is led by my PhD student, Jonathan Tonglé. So I've already presented an example of an image taken out of context. Here's another example: China, victims of coronavirus, attached to the image. And in traditional fact-checking, we usually try to predict the verdict, that is to say the claim is true or false. However, in this work, we propose a novel task of image contextualization. Image contextualization does not only allow us to reason about the claim, but it allows us to explain why we think the claim is true or false, and it will give an explanation, like here, the image was taken in Frankfurt, that explains why the claim attached to the image is incorrect. And image contextualization, which we propose, is a very important component of human fact-checking. This is what has inspired our work, because it helps human fact-checkers to detect check-worthy images, to detect out-of-context images, to write good and convincing debunking articles, and also to engage in pre-bunking communication with the public in order to prevent false information from spreading beforehand. In order to contextualize the image, the fact-checkers usually operate based on a set of questions prescribed in specific fact-checking guidelines. So here, for example, one question: was the image used before? And the answer is yes, so it's not a new image. Then the second question: who is the source? And it turns out this is the news agency Reuters. When was the image taken? Surprise, surprise, it was taken in 2014. That is very long before coronavirus. Where was it taken? Again, a little surprise, in Frankfurt. And finally, why was it taken? And we find out that the intent of this image is a completely different one, namely to report on an art project. And by collecting this evidence and presenting this evidence to the users, we have a higher chance to convince them that the image has been attached a wrong claim, and we can contextualize this in the evidence. In order to do so, human fact-checkers use a lot of tools. In the first place, reverse image search. That is, they enter this image in the search engine and look if it has been used before, and if yes, in which context. If there is no direct matching image, they also use keyword search to find related images. In addition, they use a lot of specialized tools for geolocation and chronolocation that help them localize the image, that is, determine the place where the image has been taken and the time where the image has been taken. So again, to study the use of AI techniques in this difficult scenario, we need to create data sets that contain some such contextualized evidence. And in our work, we propose 2 such data sets extracted from a wide variety of fact-checking websites, and also complemented with these pieces of evidence based on the questions which I have explained. And here, to construct the data set, we actually use GPT-4 in order to perform information extraction, which is working just fine. So the accuracy of results is very good. And this way, we collect this data set that contains images, their false and true captions, and also additional context labels based on the questions together with the prediction. So we present a system which basically uses various sources of information in order first to retrieve the evidence, and then in a RAG style system with few or zero prompts to predict the contextual answers to the questions in order to debunk the image. So these are the tools that we are using. We are searching images directly based on the claim as query. We are retrieving relevant Wikipedia entities. We are generating captions with the multimodal large language models that are specific to the objects in the image. And also we are completing the gap in dates and location based on world knowledge that we retrieve from Wikipedia. And then in few or zero shot prompting, we give this to a large language model, and it predicts the answers to the questions. So here I have 7 such questions about the source of information, the date, the location, the motivation behind it, the people, the things, and the event. And the best results, as you can see, are for the location and for the people, but in general, the results are also quite low and demonstrate a large room for improvement. In analyzing the errors of the system, we find that the most common error, about 1/3 of all errors, is the retrieval of irrelevant Wikipedia entities. So the evidence we provide to the system is already wrong. And the second source of error is the retrieval with reverse image search of irrelevant or incorrect web evidence. So the evidence seems to be the major issue to be tackled in future work. And finally, we also perform an experiment where we use these predicted answers to the questions in order to predict the veracity of the claim, that is, if the claim is correct or wrong. And there is an interesting finding in this experiment. So here our system is COVE and the others are prior work. And also we use the data set that was proposed in prior work, which is a synthetic one for the same task. And here, as you see, our system is by far not the best. However, if we use the real world data set that we have constructed in our work, you can see that the results of all systems become much worse. This is a well-known fact that the systems trained on synthetic data do not generalize well to real life settings, but also our system is the best among the 4 on the real world data. To summarize, I have presented a novel task of automatic image contextualization for debunking visual misinformation, and we have produced novel benchmarks based on real-world fact-checking articles. The main challenge for future work is better evidence retrieval and processing, and of course you find more results in our related publication. I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Iryna, for this very nice talk. I would like to invite all the participants to ask questions on Slido. The link is on the workshop website, but also here in the chat. So please post questions there. But I will start in the meantime, maybe with a couple of questions here. So the first one, it is very interesting work. Yeah? So it is a huge problem, this sort of misinformation. Maybe for the first project, I will ask, so it seems you're focusing on these single premises. And my question is, do you think there is a way also to consider maybe more complicated reasoning, which involves combining, say, multiple different premises together to arrive at a conclusion or a debunk? Do you think there is a is it important and there is a way of doing that? Or it's too hard?
It is definitely important. This task is very, very difficult. I mean, all of the audience here are researchers, and this is what we do all the time, basically. We have some scientific claims, and we reason about this. Mm-hmm. And in science, in most cases, there is no ground truth. We just don't know. Given this evidence, we may arrive at this conclusion, and some other people may arrive at a different conclusion, and these reasoning chains can be quite complex and require a lot of expertise. And this is actually the main roadblock, because in order to work on the question you are raising, we need to construct the data set, right, that contains this more complex reasoning. And currently, I am not aware of any scalable way to do so, since this is an expert task, and even experts basically get a headache, doing this. So somebody would need to come up with a clever way how you can scale this. For example, if the researchers or PhD students could construct such reasoning chains as part of the work they are actually doing, right? So as a byproduct, I think this could be scaled, but that also requires dedicated infrastructure, right? So this is a major effort. And I think here in this domain, having this data is basically like 99% of the whole business. We spent a lot of time on constructing the data set. It took us 1.5 years because we had a lot of failed attempts until we found a way to do so well. I also want to amend this because that was pre-ChatGPT. Now we have these powerful large language models, and maybe another attempt could be started that uses large language models to extract these pieces of information. So in the other project on images, this has been working very, very well, but that was also not the scientific domain, right? So I don't know if the same methodology would work well in the scientific domain.
Okay, thank you. So there is one question I see on top of the Slido. How do you define misinformation, and what kind of misinformation are you focusing on, and how do you validate sources for ground truth? This is from Slido and interested with general, but I don't know if you, what's your...
Yeah, so I mean, this is a totally important question. You know, misinformation is a topic which is studied in computational social science, where I am not an expert, obviously, and there are a lot of different types of misinformation. So we don't have this rich theoretical background. So basically, for our purposes, we simplify this very much. And we get our data from fact-checking websites. So we consider what fact-checkers have established is correct, sort of, right? So basically, we have a workaround. So we don't have to provide this definition. And as I said, for many things, there is no truth in a sense because nobody knows the truth, but still experts, given limited evidence, can somehow arrive at a judgment that we consider to be correct, right? But there is no guarantee it is really correct. And I think this is a huge topic of study where, you know, people from different disciplines, not only computational social science, but for example, also cognitive psychology should work together. I mean, we all know that, you know, even if people are given correct evidence, sometimes they refuse to believe it because they have their own internal beliefs. And this is another topic for psychology. So how can I convince people, you know, to change their beliefs? And then you also need ethics, because if you were able to do this, this is a perfect machine how you can manipulate people for malicious purposes, right? So this is as complex as hell. I don't worry, you know, I run out of work until I retire. As some people say, in the age of LLM, there's nothing else to do but work on this topic. I think there is just no end, you know, and the importance of misinformation is growing and growing. So that's really, especially now with large language models also populating everything by machine generated information, is another kind of misinformation, we could say, or non-verifiable information, right? So there's a lot to do in this space.
So I completely agree. Maybe I will ask sort of one more question on this. I'm more working in the area of image generation. I thought for a while that, you know, if we develop automatic techniques for, you know, verifying or detecting generated content, this is a way forward. But I'm not so sure anymore. Like, what's your take in general on this area and in the area of text? Do you think we have a chance? Like, what's our best, you know, chance in this? How to approach this problem? Like developing automatic techniques to assist us, or what's your take on the future in this area? How to proceed?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know an answer to this big question, right? So in NLP, there is work on attribution. So they try to link basically the generated information to its sources. Again, I mean, in practice, people are lacking the time to read the sources. And even if you could read them, you cannot kind of spend the time on every fact, right? So then there are also techniques in uncertainty quantification that can give you an idea how to prioritize your attention, where you need to check, where you do not need to check. But then you also need HCI people So how to have an effective interface with the user. So there are a lot of open ends, but I don't think we have a clue today, how to do it, and how maybe the solution is to make the large language models more trustworthy, right? More self-aware of producing wrong information. So various directions of work, but I don't really see like the prioritized or the main one. I think we need to explore more.
More research.
Yeah, indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this very exciting talk, very interesting topic. I will also invite you. There are more questions on Slido. I think if you can click, I think you should be able to answer them.
Yes,
Some
yes,
related
I will do.
For some candidate PhD students. I didn't ask those in this wider audience, but you can go and directly answer them, the questions in the Slido. But thank you very much. Thank you for a very exciting talk.
Yeah, and wish you a nice event forward.
Thank you. Okay, so we can move on to the next speaker. So we have another very exciting speaker for today. This is Barbara Plank. So Barbara is a full professor and chair for AI and computational linguistics at LMU Munich. She's head of the Munich AI and NLP lab, and she's a co-director of the Center for Information and Language Processing. She's also a recipient of an ERC Consolidator grant. She's an ELLIS Fellow and member of the ELLIS Research Program on NLP. And also, I think she's fairly recently become the Vice President of the Association for Computational Linguistics, ACL. And she has another exciting talk and topic on reasoning, ambiguity, and control in LLMs. Barbara, it's very exciting and great to have you here. The stage is yours. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for inviting me and for having me here. And also thanks for Iryna to give the talk because she mentioned self-awareness in the last bit, and I will touch upon that a little bit in my talk, but present more like problems than solutions, I would say, at this stage. All right. So let me start, and what I want to focus on indeed is a bit of a bigger overview of challenges that we are facing today. But let's start from the beginning. We know all right, AI or LLMs or these very powerful generative models are everywhere now, and they have a big impact on everyone, literally. So our world has changed dramatically in the last few years, and but that's also very exciting to be in this moment because we see that this technology is being used. So it is really powerful. But you might ask, well, like let's look at LLMs here. Are they this unique, Swiss knife, this tool that we can use, like, or we are increasingly using for like every kind of task, for everything, right? And here's a picture, and I asked DALL-E to generate me an LLM type of, Swiss knife. If you look at this picture, you might see that it looked great at the beginning, right? But if you look at the details, especially the text, it's not so, right. There are still things to improve here. And maybe this is hinting also at a little bit at the LLMs themselves. So what are they capable of today, or where are big open problems? And that's what I want to go into a little bit in this talk. So I want to open up with just reflecting up a couple of these opportunities and challenges, and then focus on two, like ambiguity and reasoning mostly, and very briefly talk about control, to end up with a call for the need for more trustworthy NLP and AI in future. So let's get started. So, being an NLP, the key object of study is language. And language is fascinating. Is fascinating for me, particularly because it varies so much. There's so many dimensions of variation if you think about trying to understand, trying to computationally model language. And this is not exacerbate. You can think about ambiguity or vagueness, or just the property of linguistic productivity, that we can say the same thing in so many different ways. But we also say some things in a social environment. So do we have a message, but there is more to the message. And all of these are dimensions of variations that impact the way we work with language in different ways. So, and I would argue that NLP even today is only scratching the surface of being able to capture all this variation and richness in language. So in future, hopefully, we're going to be more covering all these basic fundamental aspects of what's more than just a linguistic message. And so, in fact, if you think about language models, it's known that we face major challenges with these models. So, talking about language, Joseph also mentioned, the need for NLP or the support for more languages in the beginning. That's an increasingly important topic. So, how can we make them more inclusive to cover more languages, more even dialects? How to make them less biased, and so on and so forth. I just want to highlight that I want to go into a couple of these challenges in this talk, but there's much more to it, and this is not even a complete picture, but big open challenges are about reliability, consistency, safety, also overconfidence of these models, for instance. All right, so I hope I have convinced you all that there's a lot to be done still in broad terms, but let's look now in more detail and at some more examples concretely. Specifically, let's zoom in into ambiguity. And we were wondering, ambiguity is there since forever, but how good are LLMs nowadays to handle ambiguity? And in particularly, we focused first on, let's look at a couple of examples to just illustrate ambiguity. If I mentioned to you, you said you were looking for some mixed nuts. What do you have in mind? What were I referring to? Maybe one of those two, right? So here we see an example of ambiguity. Or referential ambiguity. What color is the trash bin, right? What trash bin where was I asking about, essentially? What's the referent here? So there's a lot of types of ambiguity. And as a starting point, we were interested in this referential type of ambiguity from the lower example. So if we take, for instance, the space of vision language models and the task of visual question answering, where the task is you have an image and you have a question and you want an answer to this question based on the image, we constructed here examples that were on purpose ambiguous with regard to referential ambiguity. So what color is the bus, right? If I would ask you this question, how would you answer? Maybe you would actually say to me, well, which bus are you talking about, right? You might come back with a clarification question. So essentially recognizing or acknowledging that this is an ambiguous question. Or you might actually answer and say the bus in the middle is blue and the other two are red. So you acknowledge the ambiguity by describing the picture. Or an answer might be the bus is in the middle is blue, hinting at a specific bus and implicitly hinting at ambiguity, right? But you might also say the bus is blue, and that means there might be even a picture with just one bus, and that would be an equally valid response. So that would not acknowledge that there is ambiguity in the question picture setup. So we took these type of answers and coded them into these classes where the green ones would be the ones being explicitly acknowledging the ambiguity, the orange ones implicit, and the red ones would be the risky ones because essentially not recognizing acknowledging that there is ambiguity, assuming a certain interpretation essentially. And now the question was how good are LLMs with this referential ambiguity in visual question answering, and we compared it also to how would humans react to this problem. And let me straight go into results. So here you see the percentage of answers that humans gave at the bottom. And you see that humans typically recognize that there is some issue, some ambiguity. They would ask back with clarification questions or describe the image and so forth. But if you look at LLMs, we see really striking differences. So they are very bad at recognize or trying to let you know that there is actually an ambiguity in the image. So the red one is when they just assume one referent and ignore that there are multiple objects in the scene, or simply ignore this ambiguity. Here you also see that it was a bit also for more closed open source. It depends on the LLM specifically, but the important striking result is really the red bars are huge, essentially, meaning they are very confidently assuming a certain entity and ignoring the others. So overconfidence is a problem here. Now we try to prompt differently, like you might try to add some clarification prompt to try to solicit clarification questions, or use a chain of thought strategy. But you still see that in some cases it improved a little bit, but unlike others, it got worse. But overall, this is still a very big problem, that LLMs are overconfident in ignoring referential ambiguity in this task. All right, so far about overconfidence, but you might say, okay, visual question answering is also a very difficult, challenging task. So we were even like, let's take ambiguity even further, but simplify the problem and look at just entity ambiguity in text. So now back to just LLMs, not vision language models. We were interested in the question, how self-consistent are LLMs under entity ambiguity? And what I mean here, it's about entities like Apple, right? And if you see or hear Apple, what do you think about? What type of entity is it? Is it a fruit? What triggered you first? Or were you thinking about the company, right? This is the type of ambiguity we're interested in. And in this study, we took essentially entities that could be companies or something else to simplify the study. And so we solicited and developed an evaluation protocol in order to try to understand, okay, can LLMs actually, do they know about these entities in the first place and their ambiguous readings, or do they encapsulate that an entity can be two or more things? So do they know that entities are companies and can also be like fruits, for example? And so the first step was to actually collect entities that can be of different kinds or companies in the study. So we have animals, fruits, person, location, and you see here the type of entities that we collected in each category, which we tested that all of our language models had these at least two different interpretations there. So we queried them, asked, tell me about that entity, and checked that they could give us answers in both readings. But knowing, knowledge verification is only the first step. The next step is actually what sort of interpretation do they take if you give them a query that's underspecified? And so we tried to solicit their preferences by asking, group the following entities according to what they all have in common, right? We don't give hints now, but then we analyze the result and look for whether LLMs have certain preferences or preferred interpretations. Again, companies, which are the yellow ones, or the blue ones are the other readings. And we saw that different LLMs had really clear preferences, like animal, fruits would be the non-company reading preferable, but for people, location names, they were triggering more the company reading behavior. So they do take a preferred interpretation under ambiguity that has to do to some degree with popularity of the entity, which we also checked in this paper. But there is clearly different LLMs have different interpretations. For some entity types, it's more consistent across these entity types. But then we were also interested, okay, once we know that they take a certain reading, a preferred one or the other one on, if you then ask them back about this, some property about that entity in that reading, how consistent are they? And then we found that on average, they are not very consistent. So if you look only, for instance, here, you see that if they take their preferred reading, there is a consistency to some degree, but it becomes, there is inconsistency, but especially for the alternative reading, that's not their preferred interpretation, we see large amounts of being inconsistent about their interpretations in their outputs. So a lot remains to be done in this area of just looking at simple ambiguity problems and how LLMs treat them. They are very inconsistent at this stage. Okay. All right. So then next is about reasoning. Let's leave ambiguity. Reasoning is a huge topic. You see here, there's a survey that shows the amount of papers that were released for reasoning in the last couple of years, and it's very large. Now, what is reasoning? That's another big, interesting, and difficult problem or question. With my PhD student Philip, we wrote a survey and we tried to categorize, at least there are some core reasoning tasks, which we probably would all agree on, like logical, mathematical, and some more complex reasoning tasks, and try to survey the literature on how they evaluate a reasoning task, essentially. But what I want to focus on is an example of logical reasoning and a paper that we proposed last year's ACL about deductive reasoning. So the simplest logical reasoning type, but we were interested in how, again, LLMs performed on such deductive reasoning tasks, but also compare them to humans again, and to a study in the cognitive science literature. So deductive reasoning is an example here. You have some marbles. There is a blue marble, and there's a green marble, and there's a blue marble in the box. Therefore, there's also a green marble in the box, right? You all probably remember this type of problems. And these are the ones that we are looking at here. So how do we humans do this? There has been studies on this, and let me just jump to the next slide. Indeed, for instance, the study by Van der Hens, they sat down and did human participants and looked at how they solved these problems by letting them think aloud and analyzing all of these different problems. And they found that humans follow different types of strategies that you see here. So like, for instance, supposition following, you would assume a proposition and then follow that through to conclude, or you would construct chains and so on. So this type of 5 different strategies were developed or found in human in deductive reasoning. And so we were interested, okay, if you give the same problem from that study to LLMs, how would they react? And ask them to give a chain of thought response. And then we sat down and analyzed these chain of thoughts and the final answers that they were giving. So essentially annotating which sort of strategy was used, was the final answer correct or not. We used different types of language models here, open source language models. We tested it on a total of 12 reasoning tasks from the study. And we then indeed this was largely a manual effort to go through these reasoning strategies to also see how sound the reasoning is. And now what did we find? Overall, essentially, LLMs did employ all of the different types of strategies that also were observed in human experiments. But different distinct model families do favor certain strategies. So, for instance, the llamas were more in the chain construction, for example. The supposition following strategy was overall the one that the models followed the most. This is not the one that humans would usually, not a super aligned with human, but it was among the most frequent use strategies also for humans. And then, interestingly, how good are they at this task? So this data set was constructed. We constructed it. So we saw that this is a very difficult task. If you see the answer accuracy here, it's very low. Humans are very good at it. LLMs struggle. But importantly is that the reasoning that they provide is not sound. So there's a low correlation with accuracy and reasoning soundness. So there is a discrepancy between what they tell you and how the steps they take, or what they tell you what other steps they took in doing so. So that's very problematic. So they are not reliable in giving you a sound reasoning strategies. And in fact, if you look again into this per strategy, you see that none of the models is able to to give you a sound chain of thought in more than 50% of the times. So it's very, very low. So models do exhibit inferential strategies like humans do, but the strategy is different by model family. Accuracy is a big open problem. Reasoning is not sound. There is a lot to be done. This was deductive reasoning. In a more recent paper, Philip extended this kind of work to problems where you need to assume also to what degree a statement is true or not. And there is another benchmark that we released, Truth Quest, if you're interested in that. And there remains a lot to be done in reasoning on one side. I just showed you now 2 examples in the logical reasoning space, but also connected to this is how do we get better evaluation? How do we scale this up? How can we conclude what we get is actually sound? And just a last very short detour. I talked about ambiguity and very tiny part of reasoning. And one big open question is how do we control models, right? How can we get them better, but also how do we control them? And that's particularly important for safety, for instance. So how can we balance the behavior of models so that they give safe answers to unsafe to queries, or refuse to answer if a query is unsafe. But there is also this other problem that called false refusal, where you might ask, where can I buy a can of Coke? And it's a perfectly harmful query, but the model is actually refusing because of the similarity to other problematic queries. And so the question is, how can you steer this behavior? And I will keep this very short. The key idea is that if you have a question like, can you tell me how to kill the lights? You would want the model to not refuse the answer, but to actually give you an answer back. And we found that there is a possibility of doing an interventional model trying to query up harmful queries with pseudo-harmful queries, and try to look at model internals to find a vector direction that you can then steer the model to change between refusal and non-refusal, and so steer the model behavior. We also have some follow-up, and this is all on English on multilingual work, but that's currently under review. And so with that, I would like to end. I've shown you like a high-level detour of some of the stuff we work in the lab, and I want to just end by saying this all connects to how can we actually create LLMs that are more trustworthy in the future. I think that's super important to work on because we need models that are not overconfident, right? They assume a reading and give you an answer, or as Iryna before mentioned, that gives you false information or makes you believe about some stuff. So trust is something that we can only gain if we know about the origin of what goes into these models, but also what is the functional capacity of these models. So we can go behavioral testing, like some of the examples I've shown you, but there's also increasing interest in model internal interpretability work, or how these two connect in order to steer model, control model. So understanding these limitations in order to develop methodology to improve them is very important. So to wrap up, I've shown you that LLMs are really great. They are a powerful tool. Current LLMs are a lot overconfident, especially in light of ambiguity, not self-consistent in many cases. They might also refuse to answer reliably or refuse to non-harmful queries. So there's a lot to be done in order to make methods to control LLMs, make them more aware of ambiguity, or better at reasoning, better at safety. I showed you also that we proposed several new reasoning benchmarks, and for safety, we have this method to try to steer model behavior, but it's a very delicate balance that you need to take here into consideration. And with this, I really would like to thank all the people. So these are only the people that whose work I mentioned here today. I would really like to thank them. And thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And thanks so much for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for the super exciting talk. Thank you very much. I will ask a few questions. I will start maybe with a question from I think it's Slido, but it's posted in the chat here. The question is, how do LLMs, I think this is to the first part of the talk, how do LLMs represent and resolve ambiguity in language? And are there emerging methods to evaluate this, especially in low resource or multilingual settings?
Okay. How do they? So they process it only implicitly, right? And the method I could point you to is to detect ambiguity is trying to understand first of like this evaluation protocol that I proposed here, showed you, to tease apart, does the model actually know about the ambiguity in the first place, right? You need to know or probe it in that way, for instance, via behavioral testing. And then also to know whether it consistently applies this knowledge. So with generative models, you can do it with prompting. There hasn't been much work on low resource languages in this space yet, to my knowledge. So that would be an interesting next step. But also then looking at internally how it processes ambiguity is not so much done. So ambiguity is a very classic problem in NLP that goes back to, we construct, analyze sentences, and there are so many ways to analyze the structure of a sentence, and there we have efficient algorithm to do and best trees essentially, or the relations, and try to find the best disambiguated way. But in LLMs, it's all very indirect via the decoding, right? So we don't have explicit mechanisms for handling ambiguity. But maybe the more important fact is not how they process ambiguity, but I believe that they would not tell you when there is, right? Like the example we showed, if you ask about an image or in any other situation, and the model just, yeah, okay, the bus is blue, or in a more critical situation, gives you an answer, but ignores that there are actually multiple valid alternative readings of the situation, the image, whatever you're in. That's, I think, the critical thing that we need more work on to go again. It's connecting to the previous talk, more context, right? And being aware that there's multiple interpretation even of a given context, that one context alone is already complex and might be ambiguous. I hope that answers the question. So we have a lot to do done here.
Thank you. I will ask one more question. It's to the reasoning part. Is that, and this is more about the training test overlap. I think we are getting to a stage where we actually do not have access for many of the models. Even sometimes they're open source weights, but we don't actually have access to the training data.
Right.
So do you, what's your take on this? How to evaluate generalization? Because maybe the models are kind of copying from the training data. And I will maybe for more context, I now also work in problems in biology, molecular biology. And there it's a big issue because sometimes the models, or different types are not generalizing to new unseen proteins. Yeah. It's very, and somehow we don't know, and I think it's a bit better we can try to quantify because we know the training data. But what about in NLP? How do you deal with it, or what's
right.
the future here?
No, that's a big open problem. So in that specific example that I showed you now, that was a study, and the corpus was not available. So we literally took the examples from the book essentially that exists. So not that we were pretty, at least we can assume, hopefully there is no easily scrapable version on the web that it wasn't seen. In that was our way, but that's not a feasible solution, right? This is not. But luckily, there are increasing interest in releasing open data sets, and I'm really pushing towards that also more. We need not just models, we need also full data sets, or at least interfaces to, like the Olmo team, the LNAI team are releasing increasingly models, or increasingly also checkpoints. The more we have, the better we will be off in future. There is also work that tries to see, quantify the data contamination, right? That can be also something, but that's very hard to do if you don't have access to the data. You can only approximate it. But I would argue we need more open sourcing of everything in future to be, how far can we generalize it? at least for some also NLI data sets later on we worked on, we knew that by talking to the Llama developers, okay, that portion of the data was not included, but how often can you do that and how feasible is this, right? So we need more openness and more information what really goes into those models to be able to do this in future. Or because creating new benchmarks is a huge effort, which is also not scalable, although it's a very important one, I believe. So creating data sets and evaluation data sets that last long is a very difficult but important problem.
So I'll maybe ask, we have time for one more question. There are two in the chat. One is very long, one was shorter. I will start with the shorter one. It also touches on the topic which we haven't quite discussed in the questions, is trustworthiness. So the question says, the slide on the desiderata for trustworthiness mentions behavioral testing and mechanistic interpretability. Which one do you think is more crucial for building trust in LLMs in the short term, and why?
In the short term, we need both. We need both because we need to understand not only the behavioral testing is important, but it's easier. It can be done much easier, but it doesn't give you even much about the uncertainty of the models or how and which part. Or we also have another study where we look at the error detection. So what do LLMs do when you introduce an error in the math reasoning problem? And we see that they really, if you look at the model internally, they essentially, some parts get overwritten and not completely ignored. So there is a lot of additional information that you can't get by just behavioral testing. The downside is that mechanistic stuff right now is very expensive. It doesn't scale. So we need smarter solution. But I think, we will get there, that there will be even hybrid, but thinking in terms of diversity of methods. Don't rely just on one method would be my suggestion. Try to explore multiple. What different methods give you different. You can only test that much with one measure. They have come with a set of assumptions. So at the moment, I would say both are very important. But it depends on also what kind of problem you have at hand and how you can essentially test it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the fantastic talk. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So we are moving to the next speaker. And I think the next speaker will be introduced by Rostislav. Rostislav. You are muted. Hello, Rostislav.
Great pleasure to I have great pleasure to introduce Mykola, which is
there is still some echo.
Yes.
Oh, now it's better.
Who is PhD student at University of Pompeu right now. But Mykola graduated from Kyiv Polytechnical University in 2019 and was actually the students of Ukrainian Catholic University of the Data Science Master Program. And his interests are centered around fact-checking in Wikipedia. The previous talks were about large language models, but they are usually trained on sources we believe are trustworthy and correct, but is it really so? So Mykola's work is exactly about these things, about knowledge integrity, and mitigation, information manipulation, and vandalism in collaborative ecosystems like Wikipedia. So, Mykola, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rostislav. Thank you for kind introduction. And I hope my slides are visible and you can hear me. So hello, everyone. My name is Mykola. I'm a PhD student in University of Pompeu Fabra, Barcelona. And today I want to present a part of my research, which is dedicated to the applied works on improving the open knowledge, in particular Wikimedia ecosystem. And I will cover the topics of how the NLP can make it more accessible and trustworthy. And yeah, briefly about me. Thank you, Rostislav, for already covering that. Yeah, so I have the background in data science, finishing the Ukrainian Catholic University Master Program and working as a data scientist and machine learning engineer in big companies and startups. And now I'm doing my PhD, co-advised by Diego Saez Trumper and Ricardo Beza Yates at University Pompeu Fabra, and collaborating with Wikimedia Foundation in terms of research. So that is our agenda for today. And even though the Wikipedia was mentioned in one of the previous talks, I still want to cover this idea of why Wikipedia and why should we research and use the NLP for that. So basically, Wikipedia is one of the largest human curated knowledge bases in the web. And it's not only the encyclopedia, but even encyclopedia includes more than 300 of languages and more than 60 million of articles. And beyond that, there is also the other services like Commons or Wikidata, which saves the structured knowledge. And it's not only about saving the knowledge, but also it empowers a lot of other services like search engines, or it also serves the data for training the large language models. So it has the real world impact and should be taken into account. And recently, a lot of people in the community were asking like when the AI will actually replace the human editors in Wikipedia. And the recent AI strategy released this year answered that it will not. And basically, more skeptical people can say maybe not yet, but still, more importantly, that new strategy reaffirms the previous vision that we need the tools to empower the editors and help them to improve the experience of editing and consuming information in the Wikimedia ecosystem. And actually, that is what I'm going to talk about here. It's about how the NLP can be applied for Wikipedia with the examples of my previous applied researches. And I have split it into multiple blocks of how the NLP can be applied in Wikipedia context. And that relates to the moderation tools, editing tools, and even improving the experience of the readers, and from multiple directions. In my research, I mostly concentrate the efforts on the first two blocks. So those are the moderator tools and the tools that improve the editing. And that I will cover in my next slides. So the first research that I want to explain is evaluating the readability of the Wikipedia. And readability is the concept that aims to capture how easy it is to read the text, which usually is the complex of factors that affect the reader's comprehension, their reading speed, and interest in the content. And previous research have shown that the readability of the Wikipedia is generally not fine, and in particularly, most of the articles are written in the level that is above the average reading ability of the average human. And what is important is that most of these researches are for English language only. But as I mentioned before, the Wikipedia exists for more than 300 language editions. So evaluating the readability of Wikipedia beyond English was the open problem. And well, the common approaches for measuring readability are using the well-known formulas which existed dozens of years before, like the Flash Reading Easy score, Flash Kincaid score. However, those are the language specific, and adapting those formulas to each language is not feasible. At the same time, there is the lack of multilingual data to build the models to evaluate the readability. So that was our motivation for the research. So we aim to build a multilingual model that can automatically assess the readability of the text of the Wikipedia articles in multiple languages. And so this research consisted of the two main contributions. So the first is data and lately the model. And the data consisted of the pairs of encyclopedic articles of two levels of readability, simple and hard, in 14 languages. In order to build that, we used the children encyclopedias, for example, Wikipedia, Lexicon, or Wikidia, and match them with the Wikipedia articles to build the pairs of these simple and hard articles. And later, we use this data to build the model based on the CEMIS architecture, which was actually the ranking model. And it was trained to differentiate the two levels of readability of the text. But what is important here that by this architecture, later we can use this model to evaluate, not only to compare two texts between each other, but to produce the independent score for the article, which we can later use to evaluate the level of readability in Wikipedia. This model showed that even fine-tuning that on English, it can scale to other languages. And for our testing data set, it reached the ranking accuracy of more than 0.8 for all the languages and more than 0.9 for 10 out of 15 language data sets we used. And it outperforms the previous benchmarks. And it allowed us to build the general overview of readability of Wikipedia beyond the English language, which is basically supported the previous findings that the Wikipedia articles are written in the language that exceeds the average reading ability of the people. However, we also found out that the overall other language editions are not significantly different from English in terms of the difficulty. Yeah, that's allowed to point the articles which are difficult for the readers so that editors can react and change them. However, not every edit actually improves the Wikipedia, and some can be harmful, and they can be harmful for different reasons. They might violate some policies, they might be intentionally adding some insults or even other harmful things. And yeah, that was the motivation for the next research I'm going to present, is building the system to detect these bad edits or so-called vandalism. And yeah, in Wikipedia, all the decisions are made by the volunteers, and there is the dedicated group of volunteers called patrollers who are experienced users, and they are checking the revisions which are highlighted and revert in case they're bad or not aligned with the rules. And even though there were existing models that will help to prioritize their work, still there were open problems like the model performance, language coverage, and fairness. So that was the motivation to build the next research, which is fair multilingual vandalism detection system for Wikipedia. And so we use the historical data, which is the revisions that were reverted in the past to train the machine learning model. And the key component of that was actually the small language model, which was the multilingual BERT in that case. And the idea was to compare the two versions of the Wikipedia page, extract what was changed, added, or removed, and then pass this fine-grained signals through the masked language model to extract the signal that might be used for the final model, which was aggregating that together with the metadata, which includes some features which don't require any additional processing, like the type of the page or the user group, for example. And it resulted in the model that was outperforming the previous model in production in terms of performance and fairness. And yeah, now it's productionized and working in production for Wikimedia. And here there is one important notation of fair and fairness, and I want to explain that in a bit more details. Why is it important? So basically, a lot of edits in Wikipedia are made by anonymous users, so anyone can do that even without registering to the platform. And anonymous users are more likely to be reverted. And the statistics shows that about 28% of changes by anonymous users are reverted, comparing with the 8% for the general distribution. And it results in the situation that models actually overfit and learn to mistrust anonymous users. And that's a problem for the previous generation of the models because they were over-relying on the user characteristics. And well, in short-term perspective, it works. So we are able to find the revisions that are bad. However, in long-term perspective, if we discriminate anonymous editors a lot, they are not staying in the platform, and there is a high risk of the number of active editors dropping. And this is not only about Wikipedia, but also about other platforms. And one of the examples we were working on is Wikidata, which is the storage of the structured data. And it is pretty influential. And this very hilarious case, which happened in 2017, where one of the revision changed the Wikidata record for Bulgaria anthem, changing it to Despacito. And it resulted that later the city was thinking that the national anthem of Bulgaria is Despacito, and resulted in a lot of news articles about that, exploring why it happened. And well, so this vandalism detection is not only about Wikipedia, but also about other platforms like Wikidata. And that is the new research that will be presented at ACL this year, which extends our previous study for Wikipedia. And the idea here was analyzing the Wikidata record, which to some extent should be language agnostic, because we are talking about structured data. However, as you can see on the slide, there are a lot of elements which are not actually the structured data. For example, the multilingual labels or multilingual description of the records. And people can change all of this data, and it results into the changes which are in structured data, but this structured data can include a lot of unstructured components, which should be checked. And well, so that was the motivation of the research, and it has multiple challenges. The one which already presented, and it is the same, having the anonymous and new users. Another is content complexity. So basically, Wikidata is presented into the complex structure of nested dictionaries and lists. And well, if you're parsing this structure, it's okay. But when you are comparing what was changed in this structure, it might be tricky. And another, the biggest challenge is actually productization, because the models should perform almost in real time with about 8 changes per second to Wikidata, for example. And there are very limited computational resources. So when we're talking about some large language models, it's not gonna fit to this particular case. Well, so starting from the content processing, we use the DeepDiff library that allowed us to extract the three types of signals. So what was inserted, removed, and changed in terms of the different types of data, either it is the textual or the factual triple, or even other value types like the coordinates or time. And later, we processed that everything as a text, and importantly that we processed all 3 signals with one language model, which was the same as for the previous study, multilingual BERT. And the difference here was that we were adding the prefixes which refer to the different types of change, and this allowed us to process all of them, like the adds, removes, and changes, with the only one model. And yeah, importantly, the target preparation. So here, the important learning was that there is the quality over quantity. So we applied a lot of filters to reduce the noise in the data, because the data is community generated. So you can imagine that there are a lot of unintentional changes like self-reverts, or there are also revision words where the users are reverting each other because they are not agree at some topic. And yeah, the final design of the system looks like that, where we had the 3 types of features. Basically, those are the metadata, which are the features that don't require additional processing, and to others, the textual changes and the triples modification. So in order to represent the triples into the text, we matched them with the corresponding description, and that allowed us to process both the textual information and triple modifications with only one multilingual language model. And later, everything was mixed up with the final classification model, which produced the revertory score. Then we compared that with the previous system in production, and we used not only, well, as the main metric, we used the AUC score, but we also used the additional metrics to better interpret the results, like the filter rate. And the filter rate referred to the rate of the pages that we can filter out from the patroller's backlog, but saving the particular percentage of the revisions that needs their attention. So for example, we can filter out 70% of the revisions from the patrollers consideration without losing all the revisions that really requires their attention. And well, also we compared the models in the different dimensions to show that the model works not only for some particular changes, but in the different scenarios. And I want to finish up with the learnings from this study. And interesting learning is, well, the question was, do we need the content to analyze the content changes, which might seem a bit like illogical to some extent. But interesting that actually we can have the pretty good performance of the moderation tool even without analyzing the content changes, just understanding who was changing or what is the page about. However, even though it is the strong baseline, it is very unfair, because then we will discriminate particular groups of users or particular groups of pages, and adding the deep analysis of the content, which can be done even by the small language model, can help a lot, not only in terms of the performance of the models, but also in terms of the fairness. And yeah, and also the productization, which is important part to make the system work. And it adds a lot of limitations, and it adds a lot of work which should be taken into account when we are building or evaluating the applied research. And yeah, thank you for your attention. And to finish up, I want to acknowledge all my collaborators and advisors who were with whom this research would not have been possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mykola, very much. While the people are preparing their questions, I have one. How can we deal with the situations in which in different languages the facts differ, and it is not clear which one is correct? So especially very touchy historical issues or interpretation of past events. The facts can be the same, but interpretations are biased, so to say.
Yeah, that's a very nice question. Actually, that is the part of my current research. To be honest, like analyzing these patterns, and also actually this data can be used even beyond the Wikipedia to analyze what are the factual conflicts, for example, in LLMs, and that is happening now. And however, each language edition of the Wikipedia is very independent. So it results in the situations where really we can find that the facts are, even the facts, not even the interpretation, but the facts are different in different language editions. And well, that's completely fine as soon as it is backed by some reference, because, well, every community can have their own vision on that. So one of the ways is basically aligning the versions of the different language versions, and well, that's what's happening. So there are a lot of tools, for example, the translation tools that helps to extend the existing knowledge to other languages. But yeah, that's always the conflict. So and it depends on the references of this particular facts. But thank you for the question.
So I also have one more question. Maybe I'll ask it, and I will also invite people in the audience so they can ask either on Slido or on the chat. So my question thank you very much for the nice talk, but goes to this simplification part of the talk. So I've recently, I work in a kind of a machine learning and biology, and it took me several years to understand protein engineering. And now I'm trying to read papers in cell biology, and it's, again, super complicated. I don't understand much. But I've recently seen that actually using large, LLMs, they could actually simplify the paper and explain it in, at least the basic concepts in fairly simplified terms so that I could, understand, even use analogies from my domain. I was kind of surprised a lot about this. So my question is more for the research side, like, is this really an area? To me, now suddenly realize that this simplification is like a huge use case because it's not only about interdisciplinary research, but also, simplifying communication for even like understanding legal documents, understanding forms, like for, people to explain. So first of all, are there any kind of, do you see these use cases being explored, maybe on practical side? And second, like, is this like a research subdomain? Like, is there kind of a benchmark? So, I mean, you have something, but like, is it, in other areas? Can you say a bit more about this, please?
Yes, thank you for the question. Basically, that there is indeed there are a lot of applications for the simplification models, and even for the evaluating how readable is the text, which was my research about. Well, and it goes far beyond the Wikipedia. And actually, for the legal documents in some countries, for example, in the United States, they have some benchmarks that the documents which are published to the public should not exceed some level of readability. Because, for example, if the legal document is written in the level which is super difficult, nobody is gonna read it. And that results now, for example, for the like a lot of applications developed, like some like mobile applications where you have the user agreement and nobody is reading it because like from year to year it becomes more and more complex. And that's indeed the problem. And I think that evaluating the readability might help, and simplification can help a lot. But with simplification, there are a lot of issues here. I guess that now with the LLMs, it becomes kind of easier. However, for example, in terms of the Wikipedia context, there are a lot of issues how to evaluate the quality of this simplification, because then the facts might vary and that is very obvious thing, but other not obvious things like the tone. So encyclopedic articles should be the neutral by the tone, but if we pass that through the LLM, it tends to change the tone to more engaging and more kind of the news article style kind of thing. So then this simplification can actually make the harm, like not only factual, but also manipulating without changing the facts. So I think that is the problem, and that is not explored enough yet. But there are researchers working a lot, especially in terms of the factual correctness after simplification.
Thank you very much for the answer.
Thank you very much, Mykola. There are two questions in chat. Can you see them?
Yeah, let me check.
Yeah, or shall I read them?
I will read. So thank you for the inspiring talk. In the real world Wikidata moderation scenario, how quickly can the system process a revision and generate a revert risk score? And does this speed impact its effectiveness? So yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's not even about how quickly, but it's also about if we can process all the revisions by the system. And the system can process all the revisions nearly in real time. Like one revision requires much less than 1 second to be processed. However, the final decision is made by the volunteers, by the patrollers, and it depends on how the big load on them is. So it should be mentioned, because that is important, that we're only aim to prioritize their work and help them to spot the most risky cases, but then the final decision is made by the volunteers, not by the system. So here our effectiveness is more in spotting the most risky ones, and that's what we are trying to achieve with the more accurate models. And another question is, to what extent are current language models capable of accurately detecting and mitigating intentional acts of vandalism, disinformation, and terrorism advocacy on open access platforms such as Wikipedia, and what methodological or technical limitations must be addressed to enhance their reliability and ethical deployment? Well, that's a long and difficult question. So first of all, if we're talking about the large language models, yeah, they can be more accurate in terms of spotting the intentional acts of vandalism and disinformation. Of course, they have more knowledge and they are pre-trained on larger data, and they have like much better capabilities than the simple encoders. However, they're not, I mean, for now, they're difficult to apply in the real world scenario. So because they require a lot of resources to run, and they're relatively slow. So they're much more slower than the models that we have now. And that makes them not applicable, at least for now. Yeah, so to be honest, in terms of the reliability, ethical deployment, I think that it is important to evaluate them and to make the consultations with the community before doing any deployment and using them in the real world for the real world applications. Yeah, I think I answered all the questions.
Yes. Thank you, Mykola, once again for a wonderful talk. And I'd like to thank also all the speakers of this first session, Professor Gurevych and Barbara Plank, and Mykola, to you, of course. So now we have approximately half an hour break, actually a little bit less. So we'll resume at 15 o'clock after the break. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 3 o'clock, so we can start the second session of the workshop, ELLIS workshop on natural language processing and speech recognition. We have, for the second session, we have also exciting lineup of speakers. I'm very much looking forward to the talks. But also, given some of the questions earlier about the ELLIS PhD program, I thought I will start before we kick off with we go on with the talks. I will say a few sentences about the ELLIS PhD program. So I posted in the chat here, and I can also post it to the Slido for others, 2 links. The first one is the link to the ELLIS PhD program, which includes a lot of resources like instructions. There may be, at the moment, it's mainly instructions for the 24-25 round, but I think next year, sort of for the 25-26 is going to be similar. So you can already look at those, and I think the instructions for the next year are going to appear during summer. And the PhD program, typically the schedule is, it opens in September. I think there are information sessions for prospective candidates, and the deadline typically is in the November for the program. For the applications. And I also want to maybe, and so Katerina will say some advice for the applicants. Maybe I'll say one piece of advice. I think one thing is about usually, because the applicants, they specify some places where they would like to go. And I think here, often how the matching works is that the advisors are kind of looking for candidates which are either mentioning them as potential advisors or mentioning the country they would like to go to. So I think I would advise the candidates to be as open as possible about of course, they need to explain what topics are interested in. It's very important also. Are you interested more in machine learning for biology or for robotics? So do specify that. And you can say even mention multiple topics, but be open about the possible countries, like where you go. Because there are advisors from different countries, and it will you'll have more options than for the interviews and and mention more people, because this is how you get attention. You mention either the advisor or the country. This is how the advisors can find you. So that's one on the PhD postdoc program. And I would also like to mention is that the second link, which is in the chat, is jobs page. So this is jobs page has been recently become much more active. And really there is now a growing amount of job postings in the ELLIS network. And they do include also tenure track positions, but they also include postdoc and PhD positions as well. So actually those may be even positions starting in September, like starting soon. So this is kind of outside of the regular central recruiting track of ELLIS. There are now these positions, they are at different places, different units. So if you're interested, you can check them now and they may be starting soon. So this is like a second, essentially, potential entry point. You can apply to the specific places. And this is a job listing page and the number is going to be growing. So I think this link is going to become more active as a kind of a job marketplace for ELLIS associated researchers and places. So was a few words about the ELLIS PhD program. And with this, I think we can really kick off the next session. And for this, I'll give the word to Rostislav. Rostislav, please.
Thank you, Joseph, for the information. Links to, we have provided the links to the postdoc and jobs of the ELLIS. Now we are ready to start the next part of our program. And I have great pleasure to introduce Professor Alessandro Raganato. Alessandro is an associate professor at the University of Milano Bicocca, working on NLP. Of course, the whole workshop is basically about the language or speech. Previously, Alessandro was a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Helsinki in Finland, and worked on cross-lingual natural language processing and neural machine translation. Alessandro got PhD at the Sapienza NLP lab of the Sapienza University of Rome. Alessandro is one of the organizers of the visual word sense disambiguation task and the co-author of the very interesting, very essential benchmark, which was presented on SAM-Eval 2023 conference. And this is also one of the tools to mitigate this ambiguity in the large language models, of which we have heard before the break, to help the language models understand reality. We can add some context, which can be visual or some of some other nature. And that's, I guess, will be the topic of, or similar concepts will be in the ground of the today's topic of Alessandro. So Alessandro, please, the ground is yours.
Well, thanks. Thanks for the introduction, for the kind words. So I will with this talk, it's gonna be like so it's more like on image generation. It's gonna be, I think, a bit of a lighter touch with respect to the other talks that we heard now, up to now. And we will look more on, as you may guess from this title, like on kind of something that we also discussed before, like on some sort of generalization ability of these models. So, but here more like on specific architecture and on the task of image generation, given some prompt text. And so we will look at the diffusion models. Diffusion models are basically those, I would say, the typical model, the common models now that produce high quality images given a certain text prompt. And but we were interested about more like the creative aspect of them. so for example, so they are able to reproduce something that for sure they've seen during the training, but we were more interested about how much they would be able to actually produce something that is kind of do not exist at all. And so here, for example, so I just posted something that is, let's say, posted from a movie, this Sharktopus, that is this monster, half shark, half octopus. And so this is some sort of hybrid, and this is a sort of creativity process that people do when they think about new, basically novel content. So where we take our, let's say, foundation theory, all this, let's say, process of creativity can be, let's say, also frame us in the concept of conceptual blending and the conceptual blending theory. And so over in this specific theory, so it's a way that it's a term from cognitive linguistics, and it's kind of describe a process, a mental process where we basically blend two elements, two separate concepts, and we want to create a new one, a new idea that is taking some of the feature between the two concepts, but it creates a new meaning, a new one, something that didn't exist before, basically. Okay. So what we were interested here is more like on the visual aspect of it, of this cognitive process. And so we were more interested about this visual conceptual blending. And so it's in general, we can have different types of this blending operation of concept in vision. So we may have, for example, a juxtaposition where we simply place two objects one next to each other. And here just you can see a picture. For example, if we have the concept of a deer and a car, and we just we can do this operation, just putting these two concepts one next to each other to produce a new one. But then we can do, for example, replacement, where we take, for example, a picture, we simply, we decide to replace a concept that was there. For example, here we have parking cars, and then we remove one object and replace with another picture. And finally, is what we were interested about. It was more like fusion. So it's basically something to create something new, something that didn't exist before. And so this is kind of a bit more the artless one, I would say, between the two, because it's something between all these three types of blending, because it's something that we want to create something that again do not exist. So it's both difficult to create and also difficult to evaluate, as we will see. And so we will try to inspect this aspect of these basically pre-trained models. And so why we should also care about this? So it seems like just a fun exercise. So it is also a fun exercise. But it's like also, so there are different reasons also we are interested about that. It's a task where it's kind of, we want to mimic human-like invention. So it's like we want to mirror this cognitive basically process that we do, like metaphor, analogy, and so within this model. And another important aspect, I would say, is that we wanted to test the model's ability to basically invent a new coherent hybrid. So coherent concept that did not exist before, but they are basically something that is pleasure, so that you have pleasure to actually see them. And the other thing is that it may have also some sort of direct application if we just think about the real world application, how, I don't know, it's used, for example, in branding, or if you want to think about how to explore novel ideas. And here, for example, we have an example of this cronut that is actually something, a pastry that exists. And this is just a blend of, we can say that it's a blend of a donut and a croissant, because it's made out of the two. Now, our guiding question about this this study is basically, can these pre-trained diffusion models blend two prompts, so two concepts, without extra training, and how we can do this, basically. Just a really quick overview of this architecture that we use and that we studied. So this is the usual diffusion model architecture that is basically more so it's based, the key concept, the base component is this UNet, the noising units, where it's something where the model, what it does is conditioned on some prompt, so on some text representation, and then in the noising iteration process, it basically starting from a noise picture, it creates the picture that we ask for. Conditioned this UNet representation, so with the usual down projection and up projection on the text representation. And given that we wanted to basically evaluate our research question on this architecture, we were basically more interested about this, how to perform this operation of blending within the UNet component. So just as high-level overview of what we've done it. So think about two prompts. Here we have two specific concepts. We have dog and rabbit. And so we give an input to our model, to our stable diffusion model, these two prompts. And then we see different types of method that will basically produce different types of combination of that. And we will see whether this hybrid that they will perform, they actually something that, let's say, still retain the feature of the two, bringing us something that is completely new or not, basically. So we will start with the first operation that we can do, and so we name textual, as we basically in this type of process, what we do, we can simply linearly interpret the text representation of the two prompts, and then give it an input to the model. So basically, what we can do here is we have this, what we say in this architecture. We have an encoder, the text encoder, that takes an input the text. We give an input to this text encoder the two prompts, so the two concepts, and then we simply do the average of the two, and we condition the unit to actually produce the images, the corresponding image correspond to this average representation, to this representation that is produced by the average of the two prompts. Another way how to basically leverage the UNet structure is what we call this, and their design. Its design for producing this blending operation is what we call as a switch operation. With switch, what we do when we condition this the UNet of the stable diffusion on the prompt. So when it's conditioned, it's actually conditioned on multiple layers, so and multiple times. And so a way how to do that is that taking the first prompt of the first concept and simply decide to have condition the entire network on this first prompt, so on the first concept for n times, for the first n iteration, and then condition it on the second prompt on the last m iteration. So the idea, the rationale over here is that early steps usually set the structure of on an image, and then we have the late step that refine the texture, basically. So we would like to check whether this operation actually is something that would then bring to an actual blend of these two concepts. Yeah, so this one just to see it as both at the same time. So we do that's the first n iteration. We give an input the first prompt, and the second and the last m operation. We give an input to the second prompt, and then we see how the model will actually produce, what the model will produce out of the two. The second to last one is what we call the alternate. It's again working on this conditioning of the unit. And so before we basically condition the entire process of down projection and up projection. Here, what we basically did is, as the name stands, alternate the two. So we do one full iteration over one prompt, and then the second one over the second prompt, and so on. And so in these ways, it's like having a more balanced hybrid, at least the rationale was this one. And so this is yet another way how to basically try to take two different concepts and try to blend together in stable diffusion. And finally, is the last method that we check is what we call UNet. It's again working on the UNet architecture. And what we done it is basically inside, given that the units usually build as a down projection and up projection, what we do is, well, simply condition the down projection over one single prompt, and while the up projection to the second prompt. And this is done it multiple times over all the iteration that this architecture does. But in a single iteration, the model in this way basically see both type of concept, basically. Now, so we perform a study over the output of these images of these methods. So we run our experiment using one model, so a simple one, so Stable Diffusion 1.4. We basically crafted 22 prompts, pairs, and they are split across 5 categories. And the categories are trying to match different types of words, of concepts. So we have the same class category where we basically have pairs that are like lion and cat, so coming from the same class. Then we have, so for example, animals. Then we have the different class categories where we basically blend 2 objects that comes from, as the name stands, from different classes, as turtle and broccoli. So then we have the compound words. So as of course we have words that maybe mesh up of so their mesh up can be an actual third word, so like butter and fly. And so we took this other type, we created this other type of category. And finally we have the last 2 that are kind of can be seen like an style transfer or something like this, where we basically have a merging of styling of different style of, for example, picture of well-known artists with a generic image, basically. And also the blends between structural form, like building, let's say famous building, basically. Now, our user study, how we decided to run it. So as this, basically all these images are something new. So it's hard to evaluate, automatically evaluate, let's say, their quality. And they actually perform what we ask for. So what we done it, we recruited 100 volunteers. They are young people, basically, aged between 19 to 25, and they were provided by the concept. So first they were introduced to this blending, this conceptual blending foundation process, and then we basically asked them to which image. We showed them the 2 pairs of prompt, the 2 concepts, and a list of images where there is no, of course, where we did hide the information about the method that produced the image, and we simply asked the participant to rank them. So according to the question, which image best blends the 2 given prompts, basically. Just to go directly to the, let's say, aggregate results, across all these type of methods, alternate seems that one that was liked the most by the participants, and basically, and then we had some sort of switch and UNet that were still performing quite well, while textual was instead working, let's say, the bad overall. Now here, basically, this let's say a temporal, what it seems that a temporal scheduling overall it's better than average, for example, embedding or representation. But let's look very briefly to each so to a quality evaluation to each kind of category. So for example, we have for the same class category that I would say it's maybe the most simple one for also from a model perspective. So if we have for here just one example of rabbit and lion, here in this specific case, even though textual on the overall aggregated results, it seems the worst one, here instead for this specific category, textual is a method that performed quite well, was quite, let's say, ranked first. But in general, also UNet alternate works were quite good. And the other kind of category, the different class category over here, we basically show that with these joint shapes, basically here we have blimp and whale. Alternates keeps seems that keeps both the silhouette, and also UNet was not working so bad. But here is where instead textual is working the worst overall. Then the other interesting thing is the compounds. The compound one, the compound word, it's where we have, for example, butterfly, where we have the both types of concept, but a compound concept, it actually exists. And sometimes we do have this in this for example, in this specific case, depending on the token, how it was actually the embedding of the specific token. Sometimes in this, so here it's kind of a cherry pick that the textual, even though it seems the wrong one, so it was overall the worst one. There are some, depending on the text representation that was given by the model, sometimes there are some examples that were quite good also for these compound words. As a concept of style findings, so here we show this style overlay of Mount Fuji with Van Gogh, with the Starry Night by Van Gogh. And here it's UNet. That one was working quite fine. And they was able to basically support this shape style split, doing this really nice overlay texture and on this fixed geometry. Regarding the architecture blending, so here what we have done it is so this blending of two well-known buildings, so Leaning Tower of Pisa, here we'll show an example, and Big Ben. And also over here, it's quite interesting to see how the model was able to kind of blend the two, keeping both type of architecture style, mixing them together very, very nicely. So the UNet was basically really preserved structural basically integrity through all these sequences and iteration that we basically did it. Now, some things to basically, let's say, basically to conclude, some dependencies of all these models that I've presented. So because all of them are pros and cons, of course, the thing is that there are some models, some methods that depending on which order we feed the input, then we get, of course, different types of output. And for example, the only one that was really the perfect symmetry was, of course, textual, because we just averaged the two representation of the two concepts. And so we always got, it didn't really matter with the order in which we prompt the words, we always got the same output. While with the other methods, they, depending on which we fed at first, then we will get a different type of blend. The other most important also parameters is that we in all these methods we kind of can decide so we try to have as a hyperparameters always some sort of balance, a good trade-off between the two concepts. And so, but what can actually do is trying to vary this balance and trying to add in some sort of new concept, but this more maybe with the weighting more one concept with respect to the other. And this is actually something that can be done and all of them can be tuned like this. And finally, it's the random seeded fed. So one important feature, or well, not feature, but anyway, characteristic of Stable Diffusion is that they start with a noise picture, and then they start doing their that is conditioned on the text representation, and they start producing our image. But the thing is that the noise actually already some sort of impose some structure directly to, and the noise is given by the seed. And so if depending on the seed that we use, we would get different types of outcomes, basically. And in all our experiments, we use always the same random seed. But here we show in the last row the things that if we do not care about the seed, we will get instead of having, let's say, always a fixed, let's say, blending, we will get really different one. There was, and this really something that is not really under our control because it's just given by the seed that impose a specific structure, basically. So here, just to wrap up, just some other qualitative results where it's also beside the, let's say, maybe cat and lion, that's something that the model was able to do quite well, I would say. There are some interesting aspects about, for example, a fish and tiger, that the model was really able to maintain the tiger morphology within this fish-like texture. And the other one, for example, is the tea and pot, where, for example, for the alternate method was really able to have this clear teapot with made by well, with the tea leaves. So it was quite striking to see. And just to finish, so thanks for hearing me out, showing you all this type of blending images. And so this is part of course, collaboration with other colleagues. And I would thank all of them. So if you have any question, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Alessandro, for a very picturesque talk and with all of lots of very imaginative examples. I have one question. In this textual mode, if one of the words, say target word, is homonym, how stable the outcome is depending on the other word, the other piece.
Yeah, so that's really and of course an important question. Like it's as we also discussed it before, the ambiguity of language, right? So as words are ambiguous, and over here we put on our shoes in our most simple way, that is just one concept. And the way that we do it is that we basically generated, so we decided the concept pairs by taking each concept and generated, let's say, several images, changing the random seed and looking at what the bias of the model was, basically. And because we were just looking, for example, apple, and then the model was just giving us the fruit. And so and we knew that, okay, by giving this random seed and this concept, the model basically knows that for this specific setting, we get the fruit. And so we use that specific random seed by knowing that, okay, with this word here, the model is basically knows that these words is as the fruit sets, let's say. But yeah, like it's, let's say, it's thinking about some sort of other direction with, instead of just in this simplistic form, like simple words, but with full sentences or more complex, let's say, information. If we would like to merge the more complex information in order to create something new, that would be something that basically would be not so easier to, let's say, assess. But yeah, it will require more work for sure. But yeah, that's of course, a problem.
And a similar question about synonym substitutions. Assume that one of the words in the pair is substituted with the synonym. Is there any, have you observed any change, or did you think about this?
So we did not explicitly check with synonyms, but we maybe show something, let's say, the full prompts that we tried. So we what assume is that if that is basically the synonym, so as an operation that nothing changed, so it's the synonym would produce some other different representation for the model. So we would get a different embedding, basically, given that it's a different word. But ideally, ideally, it all depends on the representation space, how they are basically placed, in the sense that if the synonym is, the model is actually able to that knows that word is a synonym of another one, then and it's in its vectorial space is close to each other, then I would expect to works fine as well. But then, of course, it depends on the textual representation space that the model use. Yeah, so that one would be yet another aspect for sure. But I would say something that is more like related to how the text models, so the text encoder, actually create this representation. It's actually able to put, for example, synonym close to each other or not.
Yes, thank you. I don't see any further questions in the chat. So thank you once again, Alessandro, for a nice talk.
Thanks.
And now, Joseph, that's your turn again.
Thank you very much, Rostislav, and of course, Alessandro, for the very nice talk. Thank you. And I will introduce the next speaker. We are moving on to the speech part of the workshop. So the next speaker is Oldrich Plchot. Oldrich, thank you very much for joining the workshop. It's great to have you here. And I'll just start with a few words about Oldrich. He got PhD from Brno University of Technology, and he's a senior researcher at the same university now in the speech group. He has experience from running various research and applied projects, and including the highly competitive IARPA and DARPA projects, which usually include the non-US partners only when they have really outstanding experience and expertise. He significantly contributed also to the success of the Brno University Technology team in numerous international evaluations organized by NIST. as well as evaluations organized within the IRPA and DARPA project. He is currently serving as a PI of Project Eloquence, coordinating the beauty efforts in conversational LLMs and dialogue systems. He co-authored or authored more than 70 papers in the area of speech and language processing. And he's also a recipient of the 2016 Josef Hlávka Prize, awarded to the most talented PhD students and young researchers of technical universities in Czech Republic. Oldrich, it's a really great pleasure to have you here, and please, you can share your screen.
Yes, thank you very much for a nice introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I will try to share my screen. Can you see now the slide?
It's on full screen. Perfect, yes.
Okay, good. So thanks again for the introduction. My name is Oldrich Plchot. Those who cannot pronounce it, they can just call me Olda. It's much simpler. I come here from Brno University of Technology, and I would like to present you a part of the work that we work within Eloquence with all my colleagues. This is not primarily my work. I actually come from a little different field from speaker and language ID, but lately I'm also exploring this dialogue system building and while overseeing the Eloquence project. Oh, the beauty side of the Eloquence project. Actually, this project is a Horizon project coordinated by Telefonica. So the title of this talk is how to approach dialogue state tracking via aligning the speech encoders and the large language model. So first, let's start with a little bit of motivation. Within the Eloquence, the ultimate goal is to develop an unconstrained user agent dialogue system that would leverage all information from the source signal, would be trustworthy and ideally explainable, and all of these nice properties. Although it is, of course, hard to achieve it, I would say, in a smaller scale environment like we have in universities or in smaller companies, and that's why we need to try to leverage whatever is available in there, and that's why we heavily use pre-trained language models or other foundational models. So in the dialogue system, we want the whole system to be able to kind of understand and track the state of the whole dialogue. So we need to be aware of what's the user's intent and identify some important key information like the slots in the dialogue. I will come to that a little bit later. And also, ideally, we want to leverage all of the information that is available to us. So, and here I would talk about the speech, because often in these dialogue systems, we simply convert the speech into a text representation and go from there. This is a natural approach, but of course, this is a very hard compression, losing lots of information. All emotional expressions are lost, intonation is lost. So these are cues that if trained, if this information is available during the overall training of the whole system, smart models like LLMs can grasp such information and utilize it. And of course, the other motivation to do so is to streamline the whole process. So as I already said, we would be typically doing speech, going to ASR, then do some little error correction, and only then do this text-based dialogue state tracking. And we would lose all of this information. And also, not only we would be losing some information that is not transcribed into the text, but we would be also increasing the overall latency of the system. And practically, we can achieve achieve all of this by interconnecting the speech directly with the objective of training the dialogue state tracking system. But to develop a fully end-to-end system is very hard. First of all, some reasonable data are not available to us researchers to train it. They are very scarce, and also the domain variability is very high. So whenever you develop something for a particular application, it's almost unusable anywhere else. So that's why many researchers and companies nowadays try to leverage these large and open source models for individual modalities. And in the modality of speech, we are talking about the foundational models like WAF-LM, Wave2Vec, Hubert, and so on. And of course, in text, we talk about the large language models, like open models like Olmo or EuroLLM, or commercial models like Llama or Gemma. They are very good and getting better every single day. So this is a very rapidly developing environment. So to put this more into the context, what we are doing with this scheme of interconnecting the foundational models, we don't only do the dialogue state tracking, but we've also tried for speech translation. We also developed a system to do LLM-based ASR. There are these series of chime challenges where we got a pretty nice results with a system that is tuned, that LLM-based system tuned just for ASR. And lately, we also try to adapt a text-based retrieval system for speech input. So this would allow us to have some question answering or retrieval system that would allow the combination of either speech or text query, both in the query side and the answer side. So that is interesting. And for that, we try to, of course, get some more data to really train this and test it, and we try to utilize the open Spotify data. But today I will just focus on the dialogue state tracking, basically introduce you some recent results that we've published in Interspeech conference that will be this summer. And so let's go for it. So how to interconnect the LLM and a speech encoder? So we basically have these two foundational models that produced or consume some embeddings with a different granularity. So on a speech encoder side, we are talking about the models such as Whisper or WAF-LM, Hubert encoders. So this SSL models like WAF-LM and Whisper, WAF-LM and Hubert, they are very popular and easy to use. The encoder decoder, basically ASR system. This is the Whisper model. They are a little bit larger and more complicated to use, but we can also, of course, use them in this scheme. Basically, just forgetting the last layer and just using the encoder part of it. So these systems, they would produce some embeddings every now and then, and the granularity in a speech processing is usually a few tenths of milliseconds for every embedding, while the granularity on the input of the LLM is much higher, because we talk about embeddings of text and the token and the tokens. So the granularity there would represent few hundred milliseconds. So that's when we need to somehow interconnect these two spaces, not only to align them a little bit in time, because it would not work very well if we just produced an input to the LLM every 50 milliseconds, as is the granularity for a typical speech encoder like WAF-LM. But we need to do something about it. So what we do is that we would stack, in this case, 6 embeddings out of this WAF-LM, and then we would send it further through some 2 layers of transformer encoder, so that this module in red, the connector module we call it, is able to align itself to the LLM. So the idea here in general is that we would keep these 2 financial models fixed in order not only to save some time during the training, but mostly because we are often facing a low data in the training and problem of overfitting for such small data sets. And while freezing these models, we will basically avoid the catastrophic forgetting that can happen when we overfit on some small data. But we will see that we can partially unfreeze these models during training or introduce some adapters as well. And I haven't talked about much what kind of LLMs do we use here. So we did the base of our experiments with the open source models like Olmo. They are not the very best one, especially this first generation of Olmo, but what they offer is the open source nature of it. So we know what they were trained on, and we can check whether they haven't seen our training or test data at all. So this is very valuable, and we can basically trust the results. Of course, later on we will see that utilizing much stronger and bigger model pays off in the overall accuracy. So I will just very quickly show you what the task-oriented dialogue is about and what's the dialogue state tracking. So we would have a dialogue when the user is asking for a hotel. Like user says, I'm looking for a hotel to stay that is cheap. Agent would respond, okay, do you have a specific area you want to stay in? And then the conversation continues. No, I just need to make sure it's cheap. Oh, and I need parking. An agent would respond to him, I found a cheap hotel for you that includes parking. Do you like me to book it? And the user says, yes. I also need a taxi from the central train station to the hotel. And finally, the agent response would be, the name of the hotel is Aimo. What time would you like to what time would you like to have the taxi? So this is a part of a conversation that we would find in a data set like spoken was, for example. So what the system is actually tracking and has to identify within this dialogue, this our task that we are focusing on right now, is to identify correctly the domain of the whole dialogue. So here the domain would be a hotel, and the slots would be important information that relates to this domain. So we would have a slot with the name of a price range that would relate to how expensive the hotel might be. So this value of this slot would be that it is a cheap, that we are looking for a cheap hotel, and the type of the slot, the type of the facility would be a hotel here, and it should include parking. So the again name of the slot is parking, and here now the answer would be binary yes or no. And it would continue. We also want a taxi with a departure from the central station and destination to the hotel. So these are the things that we would like to extract during the dialogue and based on them provide some answers ideally. So how to train this thing? Obviously, you probably understand that there is not enough annotated data sets with such a granularity that would be giving you all of this information about the domain, slots, and actual natural conversation between humans. To say the least, it is almost impossible to find all of this with also the original speech modality. So this is a little problematic. So we first need to pre-train the system somehow so that it actually is able to handle speech on its own, and only then we will focus on this more finer task of the dialogue state tracking. So what we do first is we do ASR pre-training, where the objective is a good transcription of the speech to text via this whole system, where the finish is the LLM, which is asked to do the transcription. So what we did here, we trained on a data sets like Fisher, LibreSpeech, or How-To that would contain Fisher and How-To. They would contain some conversations, so that we are staying kind of in domain of conversational data. LibreSpeech is a little bit tricky because it's basically a read speech, but there is a vast amount of it, and if you have a little bit of good data, usually these times it's not enough. So adding the LibreSpeech into the mix usually helps. And then we have to decide how to train the front end of it, whether to keep the speech encoder fixed or whether to allow retraining it or not. So these kind of ablations I will show you later. So it can be perhaps beneficial to allow retraining even the speech foundational model, which I had in the previous picture marked as frozen. But we have observed that when we increase the capacity and size and of the LLM, this unfreezing of the speech encoder is less and less beneficial. So perhaps in the future, this will not be so necessary to do some full fine-tuning of the speech encoder. And of course, we have to be careful about the domain brittleness and the overfitting for the target task. So we would ideally mix together multiple data sets and multiple tasks in the training to keep some robustness. And after we do this first stage of the training, where the data is actually, I would say, almost abundant, and get a pipeline that is stable to handle the speech input that is translated to representations that are fit for the target LLM, we then proceed with the downstream fine-tuning, basically connecting the dialogue state tracking objective also into the training, and also continue still in this fine-tuning stage with still optimizing also for the text transcription for the ASR. And in this stage, we can also opt for fine-tuning the LLM fully, which usually is very beneficial if we can allow it. But again, we have to be careful about the brittleness, or we can just include some adapters into the model to try to push it a little bit more to the target domain. So this is a graphical interpretation of what I said. So in the first stage, we can either have the both foundational models frozen and have an alignment model being trained where the instruction is for the LLM is to transcribe the input. That would be just basically the soft prompt via the embeddings that are translated from the speech embedding via the alignment model into the input of the LLM, and we would train with the classical objective of the speech recognition system. We can also allow ourselves to fine-tune the speech encoder and do exactly the same. And in the stage 2 of the training, we would be having multiple turns in the dialogue, and we would be utilizing the outputs from a previous turn as a context always to the other turn. So here we would take the pipeline with the first, basically as we have finished last time, producing the ASR hypothesis, but also with together with the ASR hypothesis, the LLM model would be asked to predict the dialogue states and the domains and so on. And we would take this history, like the ASR hypothesis, feed it further in the next turn of the dialogue, and run this pipeline again, but now with a proper history, and again produce a hypothesis that could, ASR hypothesis that could go farther as a context that you continuously kind of concatenate and continuously predict the dialogue states. Eventually, we can, of course, opt to unfreeze part of the LLM via introducing some LoRa adapters into it. So how does the input and output of this model look like? So we have an instruction to the model that is basically telling it to do the transcription and fill the empty domains and slots in some JSON structure that you show to the model. On the input, you will give it the speech embeddings. And here in the blue color, there is the previous history that was predicted via an ASR. And then the model is basically asked to fill whatever is here in the green. So it is asked to do yet another turn of the ASR transcript and fill in the domains and identify the slots and their values. So overall, we would minimize the negative likelihood of this JSON string that encodes the dialog state for the current turn. Those would be these transcription domains and the slots. And we evaluate the whole thing on two metrics that you might probably be familiar with. So we compute the slot error rate, where we basically the number of errors for the name and slot name and value pairs, as is the word error rate in ASR, but this time it's for slots. So we would have the errors like insertions, substitutions, and deletions. And also we would evaluate the joint goal accuracy. So to explain how it works, basically you had a correct hit where you predict correctly both the domain and the slot names and the values, all of it for a given turn. And then the overall joint call accuracy is the percentage of correctly predicted turns. So this is a little bit more complicated metric. So I will talk briefly about the data sets that we utilize here. So we have concentrated on spoken voice data set that basically contain an enacted conversation between user and agents. And what is important here is that it's more or less natural speech produced by humans. That is important. It's not easy to find a lots of dialogue data sets that would contain speech and are properly annotated. So this is one of the best known ones. It contains multi-domain dialogues. So the domains would be, for example, hotels, taxis, restaurant, attraction, trains, and hospitals, and maybe perhaps some more. And it contains ASR transcripts, which we would be using here as a ground truth, which is, of course, not ideal, but human annotators are quite expensive, so that's what we need to work with. So the original dataset comes with the transcripts provided by some Alibaba ASR, which is getting dated a little bit. So what we did, we transcribed the data with the newest Whisper Large and got some improvement in word error rate. We checked by manually annotating few hundred turns to verify that we are indeed getting better accuracy than the original ASR, to basically assess how important is to have correctly transcribed data here in the training, or whether it is feasible to completely forget employing human annotators to produce correct or ground truth 100% correct transcripts of these dialogues. And interestingly enough, this contains also cross-turn slots, which makes it interesting. And then as an additional data, we would employ a speech-aware multivoice. That is, for the text community, probably multivoice is known. It's a textual dialogue data set, but this speech-aware multivoice is, some part of it is read or even straight up produced by text-to-speech systems. So it is not nearly ideal for our purposes, and we treat it mostly as as yet another source of data to explore training on multiple data to increase the accuracy and robustness. And there are the problems in this data. So this is not our primary goal to focus on this data, but I have it here since my results would like to show something with this data as well. And both, as the spoken was, it contains some multi-domain dialogues. Interesting thing about this data is that the def and test set that are defined in this data set have completely different slot names. So the data between def and test are split in a completely different city. So this is rather interesting. So to directly go to some results, we can see some baseline results. So the baseline here would be a cascaded pipeline where we do what I said in the very beginning, basically process the speech with an ASR and then give it to the Olmo 1B model and either fine-tune or not fine-tune it. And we also explore whether it is important to provide the user agent dialogue history to the LLM. So first, let's see what happened with this ASR transcripts. So as you remember on previous slides, when I commenting the speech was dataset, is that you can either use the original transcripts there are or simply run the best ASR now that you have on your hands. And indeed, this second line is when we run the system with the Whisper ASR compared to the Alibaba ASR. So there can be some improvement here. Then we would focus what can happen when we also include the multivos data into the training here. So here it did not help much, but perhaps it increased robustness, which you can see that on the multivos test set and dev set. Dev set, it has indeed improved the results and not decreased so much on the spoken voice. So we were reasonably happy to see this result, as the overall robustness of the system has been increased. And then we can see what happens where we actually add the user agent history into the prompt for the LLM, and we can see a nice boost in the performance. So this is pretty good. And so that's for the text-based baselines, basically cascaded baselines. And one more remark is that for the final results, we did also some post-processing. That is pretty common in these types of the systems, where we actually don't need to perfectly predict some slot names or values, but we can be close enough. If we have some data set of the possible slots and their values, which is quite common on some focused dialogue system, for example, that is designed to serve a taxi service in a particular city. So you can just do a correction when the model predicts a correct domain and slot name, like approximately. Let's say it predicts the name of the hotel would be Grand Hotel, but the ground truth in the data set would be the Grand Hotel. So you can easily match these two names and basically replace the predicted value with the value in the database, and then count this as a correct answer. So this is pretty standard procedure. For this, we have used some open source library called Fuzzy Wuzzy. I think it was a pretty easy post-processing experiment that brought additional improvement. So now let's move on to some models our systems with the aligned model. So we would have a speech encoder here. We have chosen WAF-LM for this case, and the LLM again would be Olmo 1B, and we would also be training the connector module that would now consist of some two layers of the two transformer layers, where in the input we would be stacking these 6 frame-wise representations from the WAF-LM model. And we can see that overall the results have already improved here, and also it has, like, the joint goal accuracy has improved when we added the multivos dataset into the training. You can also see, I don't know if you can see my mouse, probably not, but you can see that by this error correction via this fuzzy matching, we achieve a nice boost of the performance, and we also achieve a nice boost of the performance when we actually allow ourselves to slightly fine-tune the language model, Olmo 1B, via some adapter that is here in case LoRa with a rank of 16. So these results were quite encouraging with only a 1 billion model and a joint goal accuracy on spoken voice of 34. It's already very good results. But in the end, of course, we did not stay with this open source model. We wanted to see where we can go with much larger models. So this is kind of a summary table from our paper that we submitted to Interspeech. The first 2 systems are some respected baselines from published works on spoken voice dataset with the first one is even with the same model as we use here. So that's the Gamma 9 billion instruct model. The third system would be our cascaded pipeline, where we, in this case, instead of WAF-LM, we use the Whisper. That is the best baseline that we had here. And then we can see the difference between Olmo 1B with WAF-LM versus Gamma 9 billion instruct with WAF-LM. So you can see that the jump in the joint goal accuracy is pretty substantial, and this is just by replacing the LLM to one that is more state-of-the-art and just running the baselines, not doing much more of any more tuning. So I think the whole field has of this dialogue-based system that interconnects speech and LLMs can now proceed pretty rapidly forward. So I will just conclude here on this final slide. So there are, of course, lots more work to do and some limitations. So obviously, if we want to be true and report results that are trustworthy, we need to also know what the models were trained on and how. And this is available only when you know when the authors have published the data or are very open to how they and what they train on. So we would like to explore newer open models like Olmo V2 or EuroLLM or Salamandra or some other models like that. We would probably want to give a little bit more attention to explore whether it is beneficial to focus more on encoder-decoder models like Whisper, that is basically an ASR system, or whether just some SSL, like self-supervised learning-based model like WAF-LM is enough to provide a crude to provide just speech features without much focus on the, without being discriminatively trained to do ASR task. And there is lots of more work that one can do with the slot error analysis. We can focus on time information, do something with the name entities. So what comes in mind is to mitigate all of this by some data augmentation or even data retrieval. And we should try to explain what is happening between this disparity of the spoken voice and multi-voice data set, even though this multi-voice, speech-over multi-voice, as I said, is partially produced by TTS and the red speech. So this is not a primarily focus of ours at the time right now. And eventually we would like to be able to train this thing already from the scratch, from the very beginning, and be able to independently train on speech and text, not having to have always a speech transcript or text transcript of a speech utterance, because there is much more text data available than the speech data. So we would like to design a pipeline where we can independently or jointly and independently train with both, and do it in a multitask fashion from the very beginning. And of course, how to inject the prior information into the LLM is also very important. Some prompt tuning has shown to be important, because you can have basically a prompt that is saying the same thing, but for different LLMs, it just behaves differently. So I think it was IDIAP that now had their latest paper. I think it will be for interspeech, where they show that you can just transform the same prompts into, you can tune them for a particular LLMs, and you just get a nice performance boost. We can experiment with a few shot examples during the inference, and so on. So I think that kind of summarizes it. I think that the field of doing dialogue systems directly with speech without the intermediate step of ASR is quite interesting, and it's now alive and progressing pretty fast. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ondřej, for the very nice talk. We are running a little bit out of time here.
Yeah.
I'll maybe just ask one quick question here, and then post something in the chat, and I'll invite others also to post questions in the chat. So my question is more, so at the moment you use this kind of explicit representation of the state, domains and the slots.
Yeah.
Do you think having some kind of an implicit, just embedding vector, which would somehow capture, and which you wouldn't have to kind of label manually, which you would just somehow learn in some, self-supervised way, which would capture this information, carry this over? You think it's feasible, or it's not somehow considered? Or...
Yes, I think it's eventually something that we would like to aim for, but maybe perhaps when we move towards like one step further, when we do not this is still a middle step to be evaluating this slot slot error rate and join goal accuracy. It's not the ultimate goal is whether the user has been satisfied or not. So it's like the resolution of the whole dialogue, and if we amass enough data, or perhaps via some augmentation, then we can perhaps forget about these intermediate metrics and try to transform them into some representation, like you said, or maybe perhaps forget them altogether if we have enough data. But right now, this is of course not feasible, and I would say that this is by far not the final goal of a dialogue state system, like to present results like this. But yeah, perhaps in the future, where we optimize for the final task, that is truly like whether the resolution was correct or not for the user, we can have it.
I understand. Actually, my second question I want to pose on the chat, but is it because these numbers like 42%, is it like, is it enough? Is it working now? And I guess you're suggesting, well, it's a kind of intermediate score. We don't know how, which we're optimizing in the moment, but it's not clear how it correlates really with the final user.
So what I can say that like these results, they are one of the best that you can get on these published data sets, and there are systems based dialogue system based on the LLMs. Of course, you as a user would most likely come into you'll be exposed into some commercial system that usually has a lots of data, and of course these values would be much larger there because the companies that would continuously tune when they find that, okay, we have a problem with the slots for hotel names, they would collect data and try to fix this via data. So yes, this technology is working, and as researchers, we are working with the public data sets and have to measure what we can measure. So yes, I think yeah, it's hard to say whether 42% is enough. It is definitely showing that what we did here has progressed the technology somewhere. And we know that already even this cascaded technology works pretty nicely. So definitely it works. So this was just perhaps to evaluate this concept of directly interconnecting the speech into an LLM via this connector module. So we want to see some increments in this intermediate performance, and if we see them, we can be confident in saying that we are going in a good direction.
Okay, so thank you very much again. Please, I will
Thank you.
post more also question to the chat. I'll invite others as well.
Thank you.
Time you can answer them. Thank you very much for a very nice talk. And we are moving to the last speaker of this session. And Rostislav, please, the word is yours for introduction. We can't hear you, Rostislav. Hello, we can't hear you.
Sorry, maybe hear me.
Actually, we can hear you, Rostislav.
Yeah. And Oldrich, I will also please ask you if you can stop sharing the slides. I can see your slides, so we have next who can share. Thank you. Thank you again for a very nice talk.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry for these technical bugs. Thank you for Oldrich for the previous talk. And now I have great pleasure to introduce the last speaker of our workshop, and this is Yehor Smoliakov. And Yehor has very interesting career outside academia, actually, but very closely connected to academia throughout all the years. So Yehor studied computer science in Kharkiv Polytechnic University, but is mostly known in the very large community of Ukrainian NLP and researchers interested in speech recognition for his contribution to the field. Actually, Yehor has developed several speech to text and text to speech models for Ukrainian and made them publicly available, which boosted the research in the area. And right now, Yehor is working on the legal LLM project, which can be used also in legal sphere. So Yehor, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah. Hello. Salam. Marhaba. One moment, I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Today, my topic will be very simple. I will make an overview of the SOTA models for speech to text and text to speech. we currently have in the community. First, it's who am I? Actually, I was working in the VoIP industry more than 5 years ago. And in that time, I was thinking about a model for speech to text for Ukrainian, and I couldn't find this model, so I have organized a community around this problem, and we made it. And in that time, we already had a model. Then we have gathered the data for other tasks like text to speech. We have about 5 data sets for text to speech and a lot of data sets for speech to text. For Ukrainian, you can use from our Speech UK initiative. And I work mostly with Ukrainian, so and I can say really a lot about this language for these two directions. So also I'm building AI communities in Ukraine, not only about audio, also we made it for computer vision and NLP. Some people work with quantum technologies here, and we have a small group of these researchers in Ukraine. It's all things that you can freely download and use. You can find in our Hugging Face organizations. You can see a link to these organizations on this screen. So I can say you can follow it because this initiative is actively developing by me and other researchers here because we want to make Ukrainian available to everyone in the world. So you can contribute to this organization and to other directions we are working on. Here in that organization, you can find different data sets like evaluation data sets, training data sets. Also, I have organized the Crimean Tatar text-to-speech voice recording. We have recorded some Crimean Tatar people, and you can find them in that organization. Also, I am working on some scientific projects and develop some tools for this field. So you can check out some spaces on Hugging Face and all models you can find on this GitHub page you can see on the screen. It's really hard to overview them all because Ukrainian have boosted in recent years really a lot, and I am testing all models for their metrics and publish in this repository. So you can find useful information there. Also, you can join our Discord server where we talk mostly in Ukrainian, but feel free to talk in English there. Some Ukrainian communities exist in Telegram, but international members can can join those Telegram communities, but I know that Discord is more popular for them. So yeah, you can join this community and ask what you want there. Let's talk about speech-to-text models. If a person talk about this topic, it's a very common answer that a model you can use is Whisper. Actually, for Ukrainian Whisper models, we have very much a lot models for it, but what we have with Whisper is not so quality of Whisper models is not satisfied actually. You can see this table. It's a screenshot from that repository. I have you could see on previous screen, and every model is tested, and as you can see, the most the best model here is quantized Whisper Large V3, and it's not the best model because we have better models. Here, NVIDIA made this fast conformer, but one of our community, Mikhailo, Theodotus, it's his nickname. He made a better fast conformer by fine-tuning, and now 96% is state of the art at the moment. Also, I did some models for WAV2VEC architecture and was training it on YouTube dataset. You can find this model in the repository as well, in the Speech UK initiative page. And as always, so you should test each model on different domains and see which model will give you the best result. So we test these models against the common voice test set, which was cleared because some samples had issues, and we just human checked it. And now we can say that these results may be the best. You can check against. So yeah, Mikhailo made maybe he made the SOTA at the moment. About text to speech. Here it's easier because voice generate voice, it's easier than to recognize it. And at the moment, maybe someone heard about Kokoro TTS. It's also the same architecture style TTS under the hood. So Serhiy Statskovich made the current SOTA model for this task. You can find a space, gradual space on Hugging Face. You can synthesize some voices using his model. It's pretty good model to use. and he now training a different vocoder for his model. And in our AI community about speech synthesis, he published some samples with these two vocoders, and they both are good. I would say like this, because ISTFT vocoder is faster, and for some tasks like voice assistance or real-time synthesis, some vocoders better or worse. And for text-to-speech, you should normalize text. And Sergei Kravchenko has made text-to-text model that normalizes, and it is a simple task, but is very important. Before synthesizing, you use his model, and you can have better results in synthesis. That's all. Yeah, my time has ended, but I would be happy to answer to your questions, if you have them.
Yehor, for your presentation. I'll probably start. You reported nice SOTA results for Ukrainian speech-to-text and text-to-speech models, but how do they compare to the English language or in general adult multi-language models?
At the moment, we do not have a lot of training data. Maybe 2 or 3 thousand of hours transcribed data. I would not say that this amount of data is low resource, but we still can't find more data. We participate in some activities to gather more data to make these models better. If we compare Ukrainian ASR models to English, it's very it can be compared, because for Ukrainian our resources is very limited, like YouTube or radio, and if we use Whisper, it generalized to some level, I would say. For specific tasks, Whisper can be used for Ukrainian. It's like 60% in where or lower, and because of this issue or problem, you can name it like you want, we gather more data, because every model stands on the data, and in multilingual context, we train some models that use context code switching tactics, like Nemo has made some type of concatenating samples, like we take one sample from Ukrainian dataset, another sample from English, and concatenate them, and after this operation, we train a different model that can be used in code switching context. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see in chat. Oh, in chat. Oh, this.
So there is a question in the chat, Rostislav.
Yeah. Yehor, do you see the question in the chat?
Yes, I see. Yeah.
Right?
Or
Maybe
who
we can
knew this?
also read it for the people who are not in the Zoom, who are online in the on the YouTube.
To what extent can current multilingual NLP models accurately detect and classify propaganda narratives and the visual textual disinformation targeting domestic audiences in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war? And what are the limitations of these models in capturing culturally embedded messaging strategies? I would say that NLP models cannot accurately detect and classify this propaganda because a lot of challenges want to detect it in text, but in my opinion, it's very easy to make text and the narratives in these texts that can be detected. And in this context, in this question, a lot of propaganda is made with visual effects, with audio, and to better to better detect propaganda, you should analyze not only text but video as well, and find AI usage in this context as well. But models that generate these videos, made this audio via voice conversion, cannot be detected easily. It's like you just fragment generated audio or make it worse, and it's undetectable for another system that supposed to detect it. For text, I am very skeptical as well as visual or audio content. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you. I have another question, Yehor. So assume, or do you think the visual information could help to improve the accuracy of speech to text?
Yes.
Translation?
Yes, it's a very important part of audiovisual recognition, and a lot of information like this article or where we can't gather audio information, we can get it from a visual channel, and some work in this direction also is made by some people, I think that future system for speech recognition will be using this part as well.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe a little bit provocative question. There have been great progress in automating voice translation from one language to another. Can we collect data from English, for instance, by using some translator and then train Ukrainian models and expect improved accuracy, or is it not?
Short answer, no. More detailed answer, I didn't see such projects because for this speech translation, we need to translate speech from English to Ukrainian, for example, and then voice converts it. For voice conversion, there are maybe style GTS to from 3 only, and some commercial systems. In my I can't say you which data set exists at the moment. Maybe it does not exist. So some projects for it should I would say that I want to see these projects, but the data is limited. Good voice conversion model for Ukrainian maybe does not exist, or some commercial services provided, but it's but in open source, I did not see such a model.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Yehor, for your interesting and detailed exposition of the Ukrainian text-to-speech and speech-to-text models and community contributions. And with these, we close this year's ELLIS workshop. And I would like to thank again all the speakers of this year workshop, starting from the very first, from Professor Iryna Gurevych, Barbara Plank, Mykola Trokhymovych, Alessandro Raganato, Oldrich Plchot, and Yehor Smoliakov. Thank you very much for making this great event, which have exposed, which gives a very good exposition of many challenges, the language models and speech recognition models have, and also great progress they have witnessed in the recent years or even months. So thank you once again. And Joseph, please.
Yeah, so again, I would also like to thank very much all the speakers. It was really great. I enjoyed it very much. I would also like to acknowledge the help with preparing and running the workshop. So big thank you to Katerina Zorina, who is here, Lydia Semsichko, who I think is maybe
also here, yes. Thank you, Lydia.
And also Eva Doležová with the website. So thank you very much for all the help. Without it wasn't be possible. Thank you. And with this, I would, we are really closing the workshop. Thank you all the attendees for coming, also to those who are listening online on YouTube. And I would like to just announce at the end that we are already thinking about the next edition of this workshop for next year, for 2026. We are now discussing the possible topics. If you have any suggestions of topics, please include them in the Slido. We will take this into account in the discussions. And for any, more or new information, please follow us up on social media for any updates about the next version or next edition of this workshop, which is now becoming a tradition with the second edition. So thank you very much to everyone, for the speakers and for
and I also would like to thank Joseph for your support of Ukrainian research in computer science in general, and in particular for support of ELLIS Associate Unit in Lviv, and for all your team who actually helped make this event successful. Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.